Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast. Before we dive into today's podcast, I just want to mention that in case you're not aware, we are a very small podcast and could use any and all of your support. If you can leave us a rating, if you can share this with a friend, comment, like, subscribe, all the things, it really, really helps us out and we would deeply appreciate it. So with that, we're going to dive into today's topic, which is sexual sign language for dummies. Is that the working title you came up with, Hawks?
That's what we're rolling with. Yeah. By dummies, we mean men.
Yeah. For men who never received information on this except watching pornography, which is not an actual accurate representation for the most part of sexual sign language and nonverbal responses from women. So excited to get into this today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add in there too, it's, the dummies thing. It's not that you men out there listening are dummies. We're not dummies. But there is a tendency for many men to apply the male pattern of arousal to a female. And that's totally understandable. It's like, this is what we know as men. This is how my arousal works. This is what it's like for me. So that's the best example of what it might be. That's my best guess at what it might be for a woman. And fundamentally, men and women respond differently to arousal. And there are things that are similar, but there's also a lot of things that are different. So if we're applying male patterned model of arousal to a woman, then it's likely not going to fit. So sexual sign language for dummies, what we're going to get into today, is to help us understand a little bit more nuanced approach to reading the nonverbal and oftentimes involuntary subtle cues that her body is offering and giving to us as men, so that we can start to interpret, is this working? Is this not working? Is this an accelerator, or is this a brake on that gradual building of arousal? And we'll explain a little bit more what those terms mean later on. But the one of the big pieces here that I want to just start with is male arousal tends to be pretty linear. There's like a gradual building, an erection comes amidst stimulation or arousal, and then with consistent attention and stimulation, that erection will allow for the building of arousal until eventually we reach a climax. Female arousal is not so linear. And so understanding pacing and understanding that the arousal for a woman can increase, and then something might come in the way and interfere, and it may dip down a little bit and require us to slow down or take a couple steps back before building again. And this is one of the ways that we can start to understand a different approach and be a lot more attuned to and compassionate and graceful in our sexual engagements with women, and a lot more, I don't want to say successful, but to have much more consistent results in the direction that we would prefer, which I believe for most men, definitely all the men that I've talked to about this topic, desire for their partner to have incredible sexual experiences. Men are very giving in their nature. And so it's not for lack of want or intention that so many men come up short in providing that level of experience for their partner. But there is oftentimes a gap in our information and an opportunity to adjust the approach. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Love this whole frame we're bringing in. And I wanted to actually kick things off, Hawk. So I appreciated you sharing about the difference, just speaking briefly to the difference in arousal between men and women. And I'd love to hear a little more on the point that the body is not always a clear indicator of a woman's arousal. Can you speak a little
Mm.
bit to that? Because I think that's the most common misconception that a lot of men have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is a common one. There's, like I was saying before, for a man, when we get an erection, there's a pretty good chance that there is a readiness and a desire for sexual
Mhm.
engagement. We can think about this like physical arousal being the genitals, the activation of the genitals for men looks like an erection typically. For women, looks like fluids start being produced and there's an opening and an unfurling of the yoni. That
Swelling.
physical arousal, pardon me?
Oh, swelling. A little bit of
Yeah,
swelling. Yeah.
swelling, yeah.
Okay.
Engorgement generally.
Yep.
That's true for both sexes. So physical arousal and then subjective arousal. So we can think about subjective arousal being like, the person is actually turned on. They actually really want and desire sexual engagement and a continuing like intensification or amplification of that. It's
Mm.
like an active participation, not just from the body, but from the mind and the heart. So there's a little bit of a difference in, well, it's actually quite a stark difference in the data around male physical arousal and how that matches up with their subjective arousal, their desire and turn on. And it's about 50% of the time, those two experiences align for men. For women, it's actually more like 10% of the time. So that means that her body might have a physical arousal response to something that is sexually relevant, but there can be a lot of the time uh, actually like a lack of subjective arousal, something she could be having a physical response in her genitals while her mind is actually not there yet, not ready for further engagement, and vice versa. This is another really important thing to understand is that a woman might be feeling turned on and desiring to engage further in intimacy while her genitals are not quite physically aroused yet to that place where her body's ready or giving clear signs that she is ready. And so this is also important for us to understand as men, because I know, from personal experience and from a lot of men that I've worked with and talked with around these things, it can be very discouraging for a man to feel like, oh yeah, okay, we're engaging. It seems like the ball is rolling to deeper and deeper intimacy, but her body isn't responding. Oh, shoot, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's not into it. Oh, okay. And then there can be this deflation for the man feeling like, oh, she's not into me. She doesn't actually want this.
Mhm.
Well, actually, she, she maybe does in that point, yeah, at that
Mhm.
point, but she might require a little more time for her body to catch up with what her mind is desiring. And so we can also think about this from the perspective of spontaneous arousal versus responsive, spontaneous desire versus responsive desire. And so women tend to operate more from the place of responsive desire, meaning that desire is a little more dormant in women, but it can be awakened. For men, there's a little more spontaneous desire. It's like, whoom, all of a sudden that spark hits. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. I want sex right now. Let's go.
Mhm.
So for a woman, if she doesn't arrive wanting sex right away, it doesn't mean that she doesn't want it. And so this is particularly true in long-term relationships.
Mhm.
So the genuine full arousal is available, but it's in response to context and stimulation instead of happening before that, if that makes sense. So for men,
Yeah.
that like
Yeah.
full arousal can happen pretty quickly. And for women, they might mentally be like, yeah, I'm into this. I'd like to keep moving
Mhm.
in this direction, but it can take a little more time for that,
Mhm.
setting to really
And
take place.
Hawks, how does a guy read between the lines and pick up on some of these signals or nuances? Let's say if his partner, how would you know if your partner's turned on and her body isn't showing it?
The like one of the best ways I would say is her participation. Is she actively participating
Mhm.
in what you're engaging with? And so a lot of this is subjective. That's one thing to name right out of the gate. Like, um, sorry, men, but we're not really able to just give you a clear checklist. Some people will offer that, and there are some things that we will offer that are good indications, but every woman's response is different. Something that was a cue from a previous partner that might have really been like, oh, yeah, when she does this, I know she's super into it. That
Mhm.
may not apply to your
Mhm.
next partner. So
Mhm.
understanding that every woman is different and there's no just black and white to
Yeah.
this. But when I say participation, that looks like many different things. And so if there's her attention is remaining with you, and if there's an openness and her body is creating more openness and more relaxation as you go deeper into it, and she's engaging playfully, and you are able to keep that engagement going, that is a good indication that yes, she's actively participating in this gradual deepening of intimacy. And then some of the signs that I'd love to get into later on are the things that we can start to look for and pay closer attention to during the actual act of lovemaking and sexual engagement. And because this is when I was speaking earlier about the nonlinear nature of female arousal, this is where it's so important for us to be paying attention all of the time. Just because we have now gotten to penetrative sex doesn't mean like, okay, it's on, just like keep going. It's
Mhm.
actually a delicate dance a lot of the time, and it requires, in order for us to show up in a way that will allow the most beautiful unfurling of what is possible in that
Mhm.
co-creative act of making love, it requires us to be deeply attuned and paying attention to the little cues where her body might contract. There might be a little bit of tension that's subtle, but it's indicating to us that, okay, actually, like slower, or not this. Maybe
Mhm.
it's time to move somewhere else and try something different. And that can really make the difference. And we'll talk about, maybe we could just get into that now. Actually, the
Mhm.
this like traffic light system is a good way to think about it. The four the four signs basically, or the four speeds of when we're engaging sexually,
Mhm.
what to look for in terms of, okay, yeah, this is working, more of this, or
Mhm.
it's time to slow down, or not this, or if we get right to the red light, it's like actually stop. um,
Yeah, and just to break those down, so the green light is like more please, like yeah, keep bringing it. It's wide open. Yellow is slow down, slow
yeah.
things down. Orange is not this, like yes, still redirecting, and then the red light is like complete stop, which we're trying to avoid hitting the red light. We're trying to pick up on these cues when it's a yellow light, right? When we're moving from that green to yellow, picking up on these subtle nuances we're speaking of in body language and in her opening and moving toward us, her breath staying deep, her staying relaxed, versus her contracting or closing, or freezing, or going into shutdown. Because it's worth mentioning, so many women can be unconsciously in patterns of people pleasing, like in the bedroom with men. It can be performative. It is actually, I would venture to guess, for the majority of women, probably by and large, like, can be very performative because men don't pick up on the cues. And if she does shut down, if she does have a reaction to it, like the man takes it personally and oftentimes collapses, and a lot of things we've talked about in
Mm.
previous episodes. So there's like a pressure on the relationship, on her, to satisfy the man. But when we can actually get ahead of the patterns that may be causing her to shut down, and just bringing a lot of consciousness and presence, like we're talking about with these systems, that can allow us to shift outside of the patterns of performative sex, which actually is very shallow.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are the 4 lights, though, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great system to use, Hawks, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is an important point to raise around the performative potential, the potential for performative um, signs and signals coming from our partner, and to differentiate performative signs from involuntary signs and responses. And so
Mm-hmm.
the most obvious performative sign is vocalization, of course, like that really loud moaning, like porn reenactment, like you were speaking to, which it can often be when there's a really loud vocalization, and sometimes it's genuine. But
Mm-hmm.
what's important to note here is that, yeah, many women are operating from a, a, a learned pattern of some degree of performative nature to the lovemaking. And like you were saying, that can be from a place of, actually, this is how I can, as a woman, this is how I can help create safety in my partner, is like allowing him to feel like, yeah, you're the man. So there can be this like really compassionate performative nature. And sometimes it's unconscious, and it's just a pattern that was learned and is actually going to interfere with the man's ability to really learn what does work, what is working and what's not working when it comes to lovemaking. So for men on this path of sexual mastery, it's worthwhile to consider having a conversation with your partner. If
Mm-hmm.
you sense that maybe there is some performative elements, and not coming at that from a place of like, hey, like, you're being performative, that's not cool, but to just really gently inquire,
Mm-hmm.
as to, is that genuine? Is this, is there potentially something that you're unconsciously engaging in, vocally or otherwise, that might actually not be giving me the truest
Mm-hmm.
indication of where your body's at? Because essentially, how I would approach this is to say, like, what I really desire from you, speaking to your partner as a man, is to be able to understand and learn from the cues and the signals that you're giving me through your body, through your voice,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can learn how best to show up for you
Mm-hmm.
and create the most ecstatic lovemaking experience for us, from a
Mm-hmm.
place of authenticity. And so,
Yeah.
just to name that, like, louder doesn't necessarily actually mean that it's a more real or honest response coming from your partner.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if we come back to the 4 speeds.
Yeah, I was gonna actually, can I hop in on the 4 speeds here? Because I think this, what we're discussing here is like communication on some level. I mean, we're using the 4 speeds for our own frame. As men, we want like a context and a frame, a way of perceiving what's happening, and these 4 speeds can be helpful for that. And I do want to mention, and I'm sure you would mention this too, the 4 speeds, similar to like the red, green, yellow, stoplight system in like kink and BDSM. This is a similar system where you can actually use this as a touch point and a communication channel with your partner. So if she's saying green, or she's saying, yes or more, that would be like in the green. And you can establish these ahead of time, so you don't have to pause and ask, like, are you being performative right now? Or like, we don't have to be getting into the head and processing things. If she says yellow, again, green is more, yes, I love it. Yellow is just slow down, like you're just moving a little fast. And if a partner can say that instead of having to explain herself, just yellow with a smile, that can be a great way for us to get that feedback. She's saying orange, it's kind of like this isn't working for me. Just switch gears, and then we're avoiding, similar to the kink and BDSM stoplight system, we're avoiding ever having to say red. Red would mean that we weren't paying attention, when we heard the orange. So I just want to mention, like, this can be a practical tool for communication verbally within the relationship and within this intimate space. And also, this is a frame primarily that we're using as men, but ideally it doesn't need to be verbal. But oftentimes in the beginning, if a woman's working through her own patterns of shutdown and things like that, having a system to communicate without getting into story can be really helpful. So just want to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Verbal communication is going to be the most, if it's grounded in a place where there's enough safety and trust in the relationship for there to be honest, real communication that's healthy and not going to lead to like contraction or conflict, then yeah, that's probably the best way for us to actually really understand what's going on in our partner. And what we're talking about now is the sign language, the sexual sign language. And so, yeah, I appreciate you bringing those points in. And now I want to also just talk about the ways that we can interpret what her light, where she's at in that traffic light system without actually requiring her to say anything, because that's also a little more advanced and it can be a bit heady for a woman to be checking in all the time and then communicating, oh yeah, this is a yellow, this is a green. And depending where the man's at, like that can be really difficult to receive. Like you were saying before, if it's like all of a sudden he's getting a yellow or an orange light indication verbally from his partner, it can be like a real hit to the ego, depending on how, secure that man is. And so if we remove the verbal communication, actually using like words to communicate this, we can look at some of the body language for a green light being like, yes, more, please, being that active participation that I was speaking to before. She's moving towards touch. Her hips, specifically, if you're making love or if you're in like cunnilingus, oral sex, and she's moving her hips towards you, her pelvis is like moving in the direction of you, that's a good indication that, yeah, she wants more. She's seeking more contact, touch, or eye contact, and there's just clear enthusiasm. Those are all going to be, great indications that that's a green light. You can keep going in the direction you're going, or even bring a little more. The yellow light and the meaning of the yellow light is like, hey, slow down a little. There's going to be hesitation showing up in her body. So increased tension. Just noticing, has her breath shortened or shallowed in some way, or she might be holding her breath, or there's muscular tension in the body in some way, or she's not engaging, she's not moving as much. There's a reduced activity and responsiveness in her. Those are all indications that she's starting to go into some contraction, and it might be that the stimulation is too much, or things are moving faster than her body is ready for. And so feeling that hesitation and little muscular contractions and tension coming up inside our partner is a good indication, like, hey, it's time to slow down. Maybe pause for a moment and allow space for her to catch up. And this could be that she's experiencing some pain somewhere in her body. If there's not enough lubrication in the yoni and you're going for a man, sometimes he might not feel that the same way that his partner does. And so all of those little indications that let us know, hey, just slow down a little bit here, that can make the difference between, in a long-term relationship, a man not picking up on those yellow light signs over long periods of time will erode trust in the relationship. It will create a sexual experience where the partner doesn't feel as safe, she doesn't feel as seen, and she's going to, over time, want less and less of that. So that can be really erosive to the eroticism and sexual connection in long-term relationships. So it's so important for us to pick up on those little subtle cues that, like, hey, it's not stop all all together, but her body is letting you know, just slow down a little bit, pay attention
Mhm.
here. And then the orange light is a little different. It's like, just not this. It might not be that we need to slow down or stop, but something we're doing right now isn't working. So she might pull away from a specific type of touch, or redirect your hand. This is something that um, can be really helpful if a woman's able to do that. Say we're using our hand to stimulate her yoni, and for many men, it's not that easy to find the clit. And so she might gently redirect your hand just a little to the left or a little up or a little down, and help you find that sweet spot. And so this can just be like, okay, something you're doing it's just not quite working. Another example
Mhm.
that comes up for me, for my personal life, is giving a massage to my partner. And I learned eventually that there's an area in her thighs, like inner thigh, that is very ticklish for her. And that's not always the case. That can be a very erogenous, sensual zone for some people. And for whatever reason, for my partner, it's like, whoop, all of a sudden, like her body just kind of contracts a little bit. She might pull away. And I remember the first couple times that I got that signal, I was like, oh shit, like what's going on here? Oh, she's not into it. I'm doing something wrong. Oh, I thought like I thought I was good at this. What's going on? And then through the communication, which is uh, something that's really helpful. So I would like propose a kind of hybrid approach here as really the best practice, where we're paying close attention to the signals that her body is giving us, and then we're also inquiring using language. So in an example like that, it might be like, oh, I noticed you've kind of pulled away as I was, bringing this touch to this part of your
Mhm.
thigh. And then she'll say like, yeah, I'm actually like really ticklish right there. And then it's, for me, it's like, oh, okay. Oh, she's just squirming because I accidentally tickled her when I was trying to be
Mhm.
erogenous and sensual with my touch. And then it's like, okay, noted. Now I'm going to bring a firmer touch to that part of her
Mhm.
body, because I know if I bring this light, gentle touch, it's actually just ticklish for her. And that's not the response
Mhm.
that I'm aiming for. So, so yeah, the orange light is just a good place for us to start to inquire and learn, like, oh, like what's going on? I noticed you moved my hand, or I noticed like something shifted in you when I was bringing touch to this area. Could you tell me a little bit about what's going on for you? Just be really
Mhm.
curious, and then that will allow us to learn more about her body. And then the last one here, red light, stop. Like you said, Ben, ideally, we don't get to this place. This means
Mhm.
that we have missed something along the way.
Mhm.
We missed a yellow or an orange light, and we weren't as present or attuned as we could be. So the red light might show up as a verbal, like no or stop, or it might be a freeze. She might become non responsive and just basically shut down physically. And this is actually a trauma response. And it's something that probably happens more often than people realize and then men realize. And it's a really important one for us to be able to pick up on, because in a freeze response, she's not able typically to actually verbally say like no or stop. She's starting to dissociate from her
Mhm.
physical body. And that can
Mhm.
create an allowing where, especially if the man is already very like aroused and engaged and it's like, yeah, like this is awesome. Things are going great. This feels amazing. But his partner is actually shut down and
Mhm.
dissociating, then
Mhm.
that's like going to create, yeah, some serious problems over time. So it's important
Yep.
for us to recognize if she's no longer participating, then she's gone into an allowing, and that's not conducive to
Mhm.
the type of lovemaking that we're proponents of here. No, so
Yeah,
uh,
that can be one of the quickest ways to shutting down all intimacy in your relationship. And yeah, you really, a lot of men can be doing that unconsciously. I know I've done that in the past, like guilty of that as well. But yeah, that is not a realm that we want to ever venture into, because that is just sapping the trust, just completely depleting it from the relationship, which will just cause her to close further.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then this final note on the red light. If we get to a red light, if it gets that to that place, whether it's verbalized or we notice it in her body shutting down, that is the time to stop and not re-engage.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's like, okay, if it's gotten to a red light, then actually the grounded, appropriate thing to do is to stop,
Mm-hmm.
disengage
Mm-hmm.
from the sexual connection, but stay
Yeah.
emotionally connected, stay present with her. And this is our time to let go of our own desires and just accept that, you know what, this
Yeah.
sexual connection isn't going any further right now. It's important that I restore trust and let her know that, hey, I'm here, I got you,
Mm-hmm.
and just let go of whatever desires we may have had sexually in that moment. Because if we do re-engage, it's more likely that she's actually still not going to be ready, and she's going into this allowing, fawning response of
Mm-hmm.
like people pleasing, and she might try and convince herself or you that no, it's okay, we can go. But yeah, it's going to be wise at that point to just let it, let things settle,
Yeah.
debrief the next
Yeah.
day, and you can always
And
pick things up later.
take leadership, knowing that you are building trust with her body, not with her mind. She may be completely disconnected from her mind, or
Yeah,
from her body in her mind, and she may be have this pattern of allowing this, but yeah, continuing to perpetuate those patterns is not going to open up the level of intimacy we're that's really possible, that we're really moving towards. So I know we're tight on time here. We're about to wrap this podcast, but I wanted to touch really quickly, Hawks, on the brake pedal and brakes and gas, and or accelerator and the brakes. That whole
yeah,
concept. Could you speak briefly to that?
yeah. So in that nonlinear nature of female arousal, one of like a really useful framework to approach this with is the accelerator and brake dual control model. And this comes from Emily Nagoski. This book, Come As You Are, was written for women, but it's also really valuable for men. And Emily Nagoski, she developed this dual control model, the accelerator and the brakes. And so we can think about the accelerators as things that increase her arousal, things like things that increase her arousal and things that create the foundation for that erotic awakening to happen. So safety is, like, we've talked about this so many times, but safety and comfort is the foundation for any arousal to happen. Like we've talked about the arousal response, whether it's for a man getting an erection or a woman becoming engorged and lubricated, that happens from a parasympathetic nervous system state,
Mm-hmm.
meaning we are feeling safe and grounded, and we're in social connection, and we're able to relax and soften. That allows the blood flow to actually reach our genitals and for that erotic awakening to happen. And so safety and trust are incredible accelerators. It's really fascinating to think about the sexual response in humans being a fairly natural state, actually. And what I mean by that is when we remove the noise and we remove the breaks. So some of the breaks would be like stress, fear, self consciousness, feeling
Pressure.
judged,
Mm-hmm.
resentment, pressure. When we
Mm-hmm.
remove those breaks and we create the environment of safety and trust, playfulness, emotional connection, if there is attraction and magnetism between two people and the breaks are removed and there's the foundation laid for sexual connection, like that is it's just a natural state of being, actually. And so, yeah, accelerators, some other accelerators could be like novelty, bringing in things that are exciting and new, feeling desired. For a woman to feel desired, So giving specific compliments, letting her know, like, what do you really appreciate about her right now,
Mhm.
physically or mentally or emotionally, and particularly physically, like giving specific compliments, like, wow, your curves look so beautiful in this sundress, and the way your hair is just naturally, falling down, catching the sunlight, and the glisten in your eyes. Like, I feel myself awakening, just looking and taking in the beauty of you. Like, these things are going to, when they come from an authentic, genuine place, they're going to be accelerators for her arousal.
Mhm.
And yeah, really, like, I think that most men understand the accelerators,
Mhm.
and that's more of the male response, is like, yeah, okay, there's accelerators that get me excited and aroused, and then I can just keep building in that direction. And there's oftentimes less awareness around the brakes. And there are brakes for men too. Um, but
Mhm.
I think the gas pedal has a little more influence for men, so it can override some of those brakes a lot of the
Mhm.
time. But for women, the brakes are at least as important, if not more important, than the accelerators. So actually looking at, like, how can I remove barriers to her arousal? If there's stress that she's carrying, where might I be able to help alleviate some of the stress that my partner
Mhm.
might be carrying? Is there something I could take care of? Or could
Mhm.
I just show up and listen? Maybe she had a stressful day at work, and what she really needs is just someone to hold space for her and listen
Yeah.
and allow her to,
Yeah.
to talk some things through on her own, without providing solutions or trying to fix it, but just being there to
Mhm.
listen. And then, if she has self-consciousness around her body, where can I help her feel more comfortable, feel more desired in those
Mhm.
parts of her that she might not fully love yet herself? And then in the relationship itself, if there's resentment, if there's unresolved conflict and tensions, clearing that glass, as we say, like allowing the space for there to be some resolve within unspoken or unaddressed tensions in the relationship. Those are also going to be big breaks to the
Mhm.
to the sexual aliveness that's potentially there and available when we just allow a little more attention to be on, how can I remove the brakes here? How can I help my partner feel more
Mhm.
safe, more secure, more comfortable, more relaxed, and at ease?
Mhm. Yeah. And of course, as we mentioned, removing pressure. This is where the core of all of the work we do, where it's like filling our own cup sexually so that we're not coming from needy, grabby, outsourced energy sexually in love, emotional connection, being self-sourced and having that leadership within ourselves, which we've spoken to many times and is really at the core of this work, is not outsourcing, or pressuring her to be our sexual fulfillment. And that's a whole nother can of worms, but that's another one I want to add in there. Uh,
Mhm.
any last pieces here, Hawks, before we sign off that you want to mention?
Yeah, well, there's so many more little pieces that part of me wants to speak to around some of these cues, like getting into a little bit more of the muscle tension, the movement. But for now, we are coming right up on time, and I think that there's, what I would leave with is that for us as men, what's more important than having some checklist of, like, if she moves in this way, then I do that. Actually letting go of some of that logical, right-brained approach that we so often have as men, and or sorry, left-brained, and being able to settle into the trust that when I'm fully present with myself first, and then that allows me to be fully present with my partner, really, really listening and feeling the subtleties in her involuntary responses through her breath, through her movement, through her muscular tension, through the level of attention that she's actually giving to me right now. Is she getting distracted easily, or is her attention coming back to me again and again? The subtleties in her voice or eye contact, and the level of enthusiasm and participation that she's bringing, all of that information, when we're really present and then therefore attuned to our partner, we will be able to make sense of that pretty well. And then the communication part if you notice something and you're not sure what that means, if you noticed a contraction in her body, all of a sudden her knees just like came up closer to her body or something, like inquiring and having the humility to be like, you know what, I'm not totally clear on what this means, but I just picked up on a shift in my partner's body. So inquiring with her, hey, what's going on for you right now, or what are you feeling, what are you noticing in your body? So yeah, it's kind of ironic that just like the most important thing we can do to pick up on our signals is actually just being present with ourselves. And then getting out of our own head too, which is the biggest barrier, I would say, for most men when it comes to lovemaking and being able to actually really feel and be present to what's happening in our partners. If we're in our head, if I'm concerned about how is, how am I doing? Am I performing the way that she would like, or the way that I want myself to, or am I self-conscious of things about myself or what's happening? And just again and again, getting out of our own head so that we can feel what's happening inside our body, connecting to our breath. And then through that place, we can then feel and pick up on what's happening in her body. And that's what will allow us to then make those adjustments and pace that session, removing brakes, bringing in more accelerators, understanding the cues and what those indicate, whether it's green, yellow, orange, or red, and then responding appropriately. And that's really the signal reading framework that I would say. It's actually just be there to receive the signals, and your intuition will actually be able to discern more about those than you or me right now, Ben, trying to explain what these certain things mean. Because it's different, as I said, partner to partner. Everyone's unique, and so just pay attention and understand that it's a non-linear arc for most women when it comes to lovemaking. So it does require a little more attunement and presence than we might think if we're just applying a male pattern of arousal to our partner.
Yeah, full circle. Yeah, beautiful way to land it. And, that whole point of getting out of our heads and into our bodies, that's our work to do outside of the bedroom. And that's why we say a lot of this work is internal martial arts training, So if that's something you're interested in exploring with us, we always have training programs available. Shout out to all the men in our training programs right now and our alumni cohorts. Thank you guys for making this podcast possible, spreading the sex education that we never received, but is now here for us to really step into the men we came here to be. So thank you for tuning in. Again, leave us a review or a comment if you have a question. Share this with a friend. It really helps us out. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in. See you all next week.